Hey guys, how's it going? VaulSC here as always. We're going to check out a game of infiNity between the Invincible army. I've just done a video detailing some of the strategies and lists I've come up with for that faction. So if you haven't checked that out already, take a look at that first. Now we're going to launch into a game playing a similar list derived from one of the ideas in that discussion. And we're going to be going up against Caledonia. I know I've been playing so many games against Ariadne lately, but that's because 3 people in my small local meta play a lot of Caledonia at the moment, and Ariadne, of course. So it's looking that way. But hey, I mean, the first couple of years of bat reps, I barely ever played against Ariadne, so it's a good turnaround. I don't mind, that at all. So before we get into the game, which will be on the decap mission, Decapitation, we're going to have a little look at the lists that are involved. So this is my list. We'll break it down. Note that there are some pretty significant differences here between the Tai Sheng style Zuyong Paintrang tactical awareness monster that I advocated in my last video, but that's because we're having to play a game of Decapitation, which is a very different kind of mission. I don't really like Decapitation as a mission very much. This is a mission where you almost always want to go with first turn, because then you can make sure that your data tracker goes over and kills their designated target to get that 5 points on the board straight away. Then if you're able to eliminate their data tracker, it's impossible for them to pick up the full 10 points because they need it for eliminating your designated target, right? So it's a very decisive mission. To make matters worse, the deployment zones are extended out to 16 inches, which means that your HVT needs to be beyond a 20-inch distance from your baseline table edge, which puts it even closer to the enemy models. So they're going to be hitting it with some kind of infiltrator maybe, or some fast unit, or even spec fire. So it's pretty hard to stop. With that in mind, I'm creating an army list which is going to help out for that. By the way, Lieutenant's also worth a lot of points. It is Decapitation, though it's more about the designated target these days and the data tracker. So Tai Sheng, normally I'd run the chain of command, but we're not doing that because we're not planning on letting our lieutenant get killed at all. The same Zuyong, so the missile launcher, combi deflector, HMG, tactical awareness, hideout hacker, that's in there. Really good addition to these boys here. The Doctor, of course, with Yao Zhao. Dao Yun Lieutenant. Now, in my my breakdown, I talked about taking the sniper rifle. It's just you can't really take the sniper rifle version in this mission because you don't want to leave him there as an ARO piece, because he gets shot, then you lose objective points, or your opponent gains them, rather. So to make things up here, I've actually added the Hack Tower with missile launcher, which is not normally something I'd take in a list like this. The reason I've done it is because I really want to try and trap the enemy data tracker into going after the friendly designated target and hopefully pick it off with a missile. If that results in him killing the Hack Tower later, that's fine, but that's a way of either slowing down his attempt to take out the designated target or to destroy the data tracker, giving me a massive edge in the game, massive lead, and then a couple of flashball spots to round it out. So those are the main differences here. The Hack Tower is a big sort of variant on what I would normally run, but you guys can sort of see why I would be doing that. Just going to go over to Army Builder for a sec for the sake of my opponent's list, which I can only really piece together from memory. I do know it was a 20-order list. I do know that it featured William Wallace. I do know that it had a Cameronian. I mean, all of these models were present in the game. The only thing I wasn't 100% sure about was, which groups they were in. But got Uxie with boarding shotguns, specialist, superior infiltration. The 112 on bike. This is something my opponent's just trying out. The Highlander Grey with all the volunteers. He may have actually upgraded a couple of these guys to be specialists or have different guns. Double Cataran. I'm pretty sure that at least one of these guys would have had a T2 rifle. In fact, there would have been enough points for that. So let's just pretend that he did have a T2 rifle. Yeah, that puts it at 300 points straight away. Despite that, a little bit short on SWCs. In building a Caledonian Highlander army list, I would be inclined to try and fill that out, possibly with one of these Scots Guards dudes. You can fit a guy in with a Molotov or a missile launcher, because this list is really just relying on the big dogs for the offense, and the Highlander Grey can't really be everywhere at once, so more guns would be nice. But you can see what he's got. The Catarans, Warcore, Cameronian, McMurray, yep. Wallace with the Highlanders there, the Scots, what do you call these guys? Galwegians. and a couple more free-range Galwegians that won't be part of the link team, and an SAS trooper. So that's what we're dealing with. Let's go into the game now. Okay, so typical top-down shot of the battlefield. Minimize this a little bit. Okay, pick a color. Alrighty. So deployment zone's actually quite far out. It's actually like around about here, and around about here for Invincible Armies. So we've got Invincible Army over here, and Caledonia on this side. My opponent, the Caledonia player, wins the role for the initiative of the lieutenant, which is bad news. You really want to win that role in this mission. And of course he chooses to go for first turn. So he's going to have to be deploying first. Really, there are no objectives positioned around the battlefield. It's just going to be your HVT, your data tracker, and your lieutenant as the points of interest, right? So you can see what's going on. Let's move into deployment. Okay, so this is his deployment from left-hand flank going that way. So we've got a free-range Galwegian here. We've got the Grey Rifle and the 4 other volunteers backing him up, who will form a link team after the command token's spent. You've got the Caledonian there and the bike 112. Obviously, it's a big base with a regular 112 positioned on him because he doesn't have the bike model yet. Fair enough. In the middle, you can see William Wallace and the team just hanging out back, protecting the leader. It's the bodyguard. I've also got the Cameronian on top of the truck, prone. Bear in mind that that's a position where if I move my link team or some other shooting model across the walkways and the higher ground, I may be able to shoot down onto him without him getting cover. So that may come up later. Towards the right-hand side, he's positioned a camo marker here with the War Corps and another free-range Galwegian, and of course McMurray. This is a Cataran, a Cataran here, and the other camo marker over here is the SAS, right? And then he's got his designated target tucked in the corner there, where it's a pretty good spot for it because I'm going to have to come around to get line of sight to it, but it's still close enough to my deployment zone that I'm very likely to kill it. So for me now, deciding what to do in response, I've got a couple of flashpole spots here, and I'm just trying to cover off fire lanes as they get towards my line a bit. I don't really want to be putting the flashpole spots just facing the enemy deployment zone because he's got a Grey Rifle up top here which can really shred things. I have positioned my link team in a way that they're really spread out. So I've got an HMG here who's standing up watching the table, but I checked very carefully and there's no way that the Grey Rifle will be able to see past this building here, which is actually taller than this building here, and there's a billboard in the way. So after checking all the possible lines of fire, to get to this HMG, he'd have to move his Grey Rifle all the way into the mid-ground, which would take him quite a lot of time, and it might move his link team into line of sight of my hack tower with missile launcher, which is a really great way to play it. If you can give your opponent a seemingly good opportunity to go after your exposed model, as it were, if they take the bait, you may get that amazing money shot into the link team with your hidden deployment missile launchers. That's something to think about. Over here, this is Tai Sheng represented by a Dao Fei. Invincible Army can't actually run a Dao Fei, so I feel that's fairly appropriate. Plus, Dao Fei's got the big sword, Tai Sheng's better in close combat. That's going to be the link leader, and of course there is an 8-inch gap over to that model. Also an 8-inch gap up to here where my combi rifle is. It will be prone up there. I'm using the missile launcher Zuyong as the reserve trooper, just so I can see where everything is going to be, including the his reserve model before I place it. And then hopefully cover some really good fire lanes with that. But when it comes to moving out, I am going to have to jump down with some of these boys. Okay, so there's a top-down look. By the way, I've placed a little camo marker here. That's actually representing the Yao Zhao helper bot. I'd forgotten to bring it in my carry case. The lieutenant about as tucked away and as protected as he possibly be. You don't really want to involve him in the game at all because if he dies, giving up free objective points. So this is going to be the link leader here with Tai Sheng connecting to him, and there's going to be somebody else on the other side of this building. So they're going to start very spread out because I've got second turn. Looking around the left-hand side here, so we've got a doctor. The doctor's positioned there because I'm ultimately going to have the hack tower and hidden deployment there to cover the back line, to cover this long line through here, and to cover a long line through here towards McMurray. I really want to be able to stave that off. I've got my HVT, or designated target as it were, right out here, really the only place I can put it. If I chuck it over here, then he just turns his Grey Rifle into a data tracker and just nails it from the first turn, so we don't really want that. Taking a hidden deployment photograph of my Hacktail missile launcher. Again, you can see there's a bit of a gap between this building here and this building here. So he's going to be able to fire through there if McMurray comes around the corner, but also another lane through the center and through the back line if he somehow gets something across the back line. So I'm quite happy with his positioning, in range of the Doctor as well. My opponent has attempted to bring in Uxia McNeil as his reserve trooper right next to where the HVT actually is. This is also going to allow him to move through towards where the link team is, but he fails the roll and Uxia is positioned right at the back, so that's unfortunate for him. Just adjust this. Okay, my reserve trooper is a Zuyong missile launcher, and he's standing up, and the point here is that he's able to actually see. I mean, if we imagine where his silhouette is, silhouette looks like this cylinder right here. Because of the slanting piece of terrain here, he's obviously able to look through this part of the battlefield without any problem, but the top corner of his silhouette gets just an angle through the mid-zone where he'll be able to see McMurray coming towards the team while not being in a position where the Grey Rifle can come around and shoot at him straight away. Really important. Just laying down some data packs. So my chosen data track is going to be the Zuyong with combi rifle, and I've chosen him because he's in a central spot where he can't be attacked and killed straight away, and anything coming towards him and trying to super jump potentially onto him will have to go through some pretty hefty AROs to get there. Plus, once they do get across the wall, he's still a Zuyong in a link team, so he'll have a pretty good shot at fending for himself, I hope. My opponent is choosing McMurray as the link leader, sees that I have some opportunities to ARO him from the get-go, so he goes for, okay, what actually happens here, excuse me, is the Galwegian uses Impetuous, coming around the corner, throws a grenade over here, lands the smoke. McMurray looks at that and is a bit worried. Is 3 inches plus 3 inches going to take him out of the smoke? When I was eyeballing it, I thought the answer to that would be no, but my opponent just wanted to be ultra cautious about that and spend in order to restrain McMurray, because he was worried that he might get hit by 2 missiles instantly. Even with total immunity, 2 missiles to the head might cause you to lose McMurray, which he doesn't really want, so he opted to restrain. Okay, so the Cameronian over the side, also the other Galwegian throwing out smoke grenades, just getting the terrain nice and clouded up. And Cameronian wolfing his way past the building, heading towards the central zone very nicely. McMurray throwing another grenade. This is to allow him to come closer to this side of the building, moving towards his own designated target, and then once he's there, he's able to spec fire a grenade over to my designated target, which is a really clean and efficient way of using McMurray to kill it. You're the data tracker, you're physical 16, you're throwing a spec fire, it's +3 short range, -6, so it's a total -3. You're hitting on a 13 or less, the designated target is dodging on something like an 8 or less, or 7 or something ridiculous. So with enough grenades, the designated target dies, and that's exactly what happens. So Caledonia putting 5 objective points on the board straight away. Next up, he's licking his chops and thinking about killing my data tracker, because that would basically secure the win really early. So with this grenade going down, Cameronian moving right to the edge of it, then his plan is to move forward and throw more grenades just to get to a point where he can super jump into close combat. So that's what he's trying to do. Thing is though, to do that, he's actually got to go through the Zuyong HMG, which are positioned over here. So you can see what's happening here. So Zuyong is able to see through to the spot where the dog's moving through, and gets 2 shots at him. Blister skill 16 because of the link. Unfortunately, not beyond the 16-inch range for the +3, so it's 2 dice and 16s versus a single dice, needing a pretty high number for the smoke. The Zuyong rolls exactly 2 17s, exactly what he didn't need to get hits. So the smoke now goes down, and the Cameronian can continue. Luckily for me, the Cameronian is in the same order group as McMurray, and McMurray has already spent a ton of orders restraining himself and moving and throwing the smoke and doing the spec fires, so he's almost out of orders here. If he had put the Cameronian in a separate group, I think that would have been really painful for me, because it would have meant the Cameronian would have had tons of time to get in close combat with my data tracker, and that would have been awful. So by the time he jumps up here, he's able to land in base to base, and the Zuyong is able to fire his breaker pistol in response. I really like going for the breaker pistol here as opposed to the combi rifle, because with the combi rifle you're having to contend with something like 3 points worth of armor, whereas with the breaker rifle you're not having to contend with any armor, and the dog doesn't have any BTS, so it's effectively like adding 3 damage to your pistol, which makes it more impactful than your combi rifle, and they both require the same dice to hit. So after getting a little bit unlucky with the HMG, the breaker rifle pops him and the Cameronian actually goes down, and the Zuyong passes his armor save. Sorry, no, he doesn't need to take an armor save because he wins the face-to-face roll, and that's 1 Cameronian dealt with, which is good. Note that the HMG gets to fire into this as well before it goes into close combat, so that, I believe, helped me to get the number of wounds across the finish line, if I recall correctly. So game going okay. Next up, he moves out with his camo marker SAS, which is heavily obscured by the smoke. So walking around here, and he's getting to a point where, just to illustrate this a bit better, he started on this side of the building around there. He's walked around this side of the building. The model is actually positioned behind this wall right now, and what we're doing here in this image is we're checking to see whether the missile launcher will have line of sight to a point where if he does a cautious move across this gap, will he still be in line of sight or not? Turns out that he will still be in line of sight, so he decides to move across, gives me the free discover, then goes behind this obstacle here, and that'll allow him to keep moving around. So by the way, all of Group 1's orders have been spent. We're now into Group 2, which includes the SAS Trooper. So what's happened is he started out over here, he's moved all the way around this building to this spot, he's moved over here and he's been discovered, he's going to go back into camo mode, he's then going to move across here, and just try and get up really close to the link team. So this happens, moves through, recamos, keeps on coming around, eventually gets to a point where he's going to be up against a couple of shotguns. So the hideout is prone, won't be able to be seen. The missile launcher is standing up, will be possible to hit him with an assault pistol perhaps, but the great thing about the Zuyong is he's got a light shotgun and of course can avoid a surprise attack by being in the link team, looking really good. And because it was coming to the end of his turn, I decided to reveal the hack tower and go for a missile. This I think is a decent move because when it's about to be my turn, the hack tower doesn't need to be used to surprise any link teams any longer, and I do want the hack tower contributing his own order to the pool for when I move my link team out to do the massive strike with the tactical awareness. Just increases the threat range more. Plus, it gives me the opportunity to possibly dodge with the missile launcher if I really want to, the Zuyong I mean, while cleaning up the SAS with the missile from the hack tower. As it happened, he decided to shoot. Bear in mind the Zuyongs can delay, so I get to see what he does first. So the Zuyong firing back with the shotguns, and the missile launcher firing a missile at the SAS, and that does indeed destroy the SAS trooper. After that, we've got a Cataran trying to move out, so we had a Cataran hanging out around here. Cataran comes down over to this spot, sets up a position here where he doesn't quite end in line of sight of my link team, but he does cover a small, thin lane of fire down this particular flank, ready for when it becomes my turn. So a bit of a closer look. The photo doesn't show it, but this area up here is where the link team is at the moment, and they're going to be coming across this building to go after the designated target. The Cataran here is going to be able to see them only if they come across this sort of vector, this sort of section of the battlefield, if that makes sense. Okay, and with that, Ariadne turn done. So 5 objective points on the board, looking pretty good. Cameronian dead, and SAS Trooper dead, and no Yuching units killed whatsoever. So it's kind of good and bad. I mean, it's great to have the points there. You haven't killed the enemy data tracker. Now you're going to have to contend with, 14 odd orders from the Zuyong link team. So let's see how that plays out. So initially what we're doing is I'm spending the tactical awareness order on just this one Zuyong. He jumps down off the building. And then I'm spending a command token to reform the link so that everybody can move out down the stairs and around this way without having to leave this particular Zuyong behind, right? So that's his way of just getting back into the action. Just collapse this a little bit more. But we've got a lot of room to cover. So next up, Taisheng, of course, is the link leader and has coherency to all of the boys and girls. So they're now sort of just moving in the direction of the designated target, which is, over in this direction here where McMurray is. And we've just got so many orders to use. Obviously, with Tai Sheng having the NCA rule, spending both the lieutenant's orders from the Dao Ying, and we're making a turbo boost. So everybody just streaming in a line towards the area. Note that these boxes here have been positioned in such a way that you can sort of vault up into this sort of first box, and then the next box, and then the next box, and then over on top of the terrain. It's been set up that way to be like a staircase, right? Now, I realized at this point that as soon as I hit to the top of that little staircase of boxes, I'm going to come into line of sight of a single lone Galwegian, and that Galwegian potentially is going to be able to throw a smoke grenade, not to smoke dodge, but off to the side to potentially cover the designated target. Beautiful photo here of everybody moving in, but I'm sure you've seen this photo already on the thumbnail. But yeah, really happy with how the painting turned out. Still got to add some flock to the bases and stuff, but there you have it. So what's happened is I've moved into line of sight of this guy, and he lobs a smoke grenade over to this point. When I was eyeballing it, I thought maybe he couldn't really achieve that without, you know, blocking line of sight to the Galwegian, in which case it would have been a face-to-face roll, but he was able to do it. And this is going to put McMurrough in a smoke template as well as the designated target. And this is where I'm sort of feeling like, damn, I really wish I'd taken a hideout with a multi-sniper in MSV2, because that would have really solved that problem. But now, the smoke grenade, it is a long-range smoke grenade, but if it goes off, it's going to mean that I can't really deal with McMurrough, because, you know, I'm not going to go into close combat with him. And if I just chain colt him, well, he's just going to hit me back with his own chain rifle, and he's pretty tough. But it does mean I can kill a designated target and maybe just move out. So we'll see. So what happens, of course, is the Galwegian does throw the smoke grenade successfully. The Tai Sheng moves in there and does destroy the Highlander, so that's at least that. Then we can move in and try and get some stuff done. So the next thing we attempt to do is move in and get rid of this very annoying Cataran here. We've got so many orders, so just trying to get some kills now. Remember, with Wallace there, all of his models are regular effectively, so any kills are going to deplete his order pool, which is going to be important later on. So Tai Sheng discovering this Cataran here and removing him with the power of the Mark 12 and, you know, full squad of boys. The plan after that is to be able to go down the stairs and get into close combat with the designated target and bring a friend along so you've got the bonus dice. Note that this could really backfire because we're having to use the Zuyong, who is the data tracker, who's not as good in close combat as Tai Sheng. And if he rolls some sort of crit on a stun pistol, that's really going to shut me down quite badly. But have to do it. So everybody's moving in. You can see the top-down photo. Oops, excuse me. I think there was a spot where I'd forgotten to take a photo. So what happens is they do indeed move down here into base-to-base contact with the data track, the designated target. They do indeed destroy it. Okay, so it's gone. And the next photo, what we're about to see, is me making the executive decision to move the whole link team back and defend for another turn. The reason why we're doing that is because we can take up positions where the Grey Rifle's not going to be able to attack us. Uxie McNeil failed to roll. We've already killed one Cataran. We've already killed the SS Trooper and Cameronian. It's just going to be McMurrough to deal with. We should be able to hold him off. If I was to continue around here and try and get to William Wallace, it's going to be maybe doable, but it's going to leave the link team stranded in territory where it's just going to be a whole lot easier for McMurrough to throw down smoke grenades and then spec fire me with normal grenades, and it's just not going to be as good. So the link team now, what we're doing is we're moving back down this area, moving all the way back up the staircase, and we're positioning. So we've got this missile launcher in this beautiful spot up the top, where if the Grey Rifle goes after him, it might even be the case that the missile launcher is within range of 40 inches, and the Grey Rifle's just shy of 32, so that's a good thing. We've got the HMG here in a position where he's going to be out of line of sight from the Grey Rifle because of this stair, banister area. The data tracker is nice and safe back here. HMG has range through here and line of sight to cover off this angle that McMurrough will come through. The Hideout up front, prone behind the boxes, anything coming through on either side can be hit by his boarding shotgun. Tai Sheng is prone over here, but again has a line through here if McMurrough comes through. And I've even got a hack tower back in this corner to help defend, right? So I feel like this is a very defensible position now that I've also evened up the score. We've both got 5 objective points. Even bringing in one of the flash pulse spots in with a spare order here, just to cover off this little angle, because we know that the link team is often to this corner of the battlefield, and there may be some enemy troopers coming through past this area to get to them, so one extra flash pulse will hopefully be a speed bump. Okay, so once again, my opponent choosing to withhold, to delay, or to suppress the, looking for the right word. He doesn't really want to impetuous out here, because if he does, McMurray is going to be leaping and bounding across this, and he's going to be hit by an HMG and a missile launcher, and probably another missile launcher over here. So you can see how well defended that is. He doesn't really want to flub the smoke grenade, roll like a low number for it, and get blasted by everybody. So what he does instead is he spends the order to hold him back. He's put McMurray into a different group with more orders in it, and he's now crawling across behind cover, throwing down a smoke grenade, and just slowly working his way across. In this photo, we're testing to see whether the Silhouette 2 missile launcher at the top can see a Silhouette 6 Wolf down here. It turns out that we can, so he's having to crawl under here to avoid that. But eventually, he's getting into a position where he's just chucking down more and more smoke grenades, and the goal is to be able to move through into close combat with a high Dow and start whacking people with his big sword. So that is indeed what happens. He gets up close. I don't have any MSV2 or anything like that, no mines. So it comes into close combat. Now there's a bit of a rules thing here, and don't try and be a rules lawyer and post your comment to my YouTube channel. I hate it when you guys do that without sort of going and checking, you know, the consensus first, because when you have 6th Sense level 2, you are allowed to shoot at a model even if you don't have line of sight to it, if it declares an attack against you. So there are some people who think that even though McMurray starts over here, right here, spends a short skill and moves into close combat, and then I delay with my high Dow with 6th Sense level 2, and then McMurray attacks me with a second short skill, I can actually shoot McMurray at some other point in his movement, even though I couldn't see him, in the same way that a model activating over here and coming up behind me and shooting at me is a model that I could shoot back at, because 6th Sense level 2 allows it. So there's a camp of people that say, yeah, that's possible. There's another camp of people that say, no, there's a smoke grenade there, and even though you ignore the smoke when shooting back at somebody, it's only because they're shooting at you that you get to do that, because of the if I can see you, you can see me sort of rule. But there's been a really big rules thread about this, and apparently this is an unresolved sort of rules situation. Even that LJW, IJW War Trader, or whoever he is, Ian Wood, what's his name? I think has mentioned at some point that it hasn't really been resolved as to what ruling to take. Out of benefit of doubt to my opponent, I just said, look, I'm going to make a close combat attack. I'm not going to try and wrangle a shooting thing, even though the shooting thing would have been great. I mean, even up against Martial Arts Level 3, you're a high Dow and a link team with a boarding shotgun. It would have given me great odds to fend this off. But still, McMurray whacks me, high Dow dies, and he does the exact same thing with Tai Sheng, throws a smoke grenade with Spec Fire, moves into close combat with Tai Sheng, whacks him, makes him unconscious, and that's the end of that. On the other side of the table, we've got the Grey Rifle, forming a link team, taking the link token away from Wallace and his crew, and is now moving out towards the other side of the flank. And there are really no Yuching models here except for a couple of Flash Pulse bots, but he's still going to go after them. So comes around the corner, blasts one of them with a chain rifle or a shotgun or whatever he's got, and eliminates him. He was attempting to see whether the Grey Rifle could come around the back line and get some shots off into the hack tower, which would have been dangerous, but he was hoping to get into my back arc. Didn't end up happening. He couldn't find the angle he needed or get enough orders to do it. So moving up and taking up some positions, and unfortunately these guys pretty much exposed here, not even in cover over there. He couldn't really find the movement to do it. Not in total cover, I should say. He didn't end up going prone. So it's going to be quite difficult for him to survive my oncoming turn when it does become my turn. Alright, so we're going back to Invincible Army now. Got to be careful about this, because if the link team activates in the wrong way, McMurray might be able to get a smoke grenade down or chain rifle, 2 of them at a time. So what we're doing here is, I believe, So Taisheng's not part of the link team because he's unconscious, or she's unconscious, can't remember which gender she is, but we've got the missile launcher at the top here, who is able to activate and fire his shotgun shots at McMurray. Quite an important strategy here is to not let any of the Zuyongs die, because they're not really near enough to the Doctor, and it's going to be a game of points from here on out. It's going to be really hard for us to kill each other's lieutenants. Alright, so it's going to be more about getting the kills on the models. Excuse me, had a bit of a cough. So the tactic here is to go prone with Taisheng first. He may throw a grenade at me and try and clip both models, but he went for the smoke dodge instead. By going prone, if he chooses to chain rifle me and I take 1 wound, well then that does put me safely into total cover. Then what I can do is move one of the other guys out, and they take turns at killing him, so that nobody ever, goes down to 0 wounds. So, missile launcher standing up, firing the light shotgun, getting a little bit of damage on our boy here. In fact, I think he tanks the armor saves, and then the Zuyong with the breaker pistols come down and fires the breaker pistols, and this is a lot more effective because they ignore his armor. It's BTS instead. 2 breaker pistols plus the link plus the burst for having 2 of them, blah 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 blah. Gives 4 shots, and this is able to take out McMurray. So quite an effective way of doing it. Now, I don't have a lot of orders to use because I've been sort of cut off a little bit here, but the Doctor does move over to Taisheng, fails the first whip check, spends one of my precious command tokens to revive Taisheng, so back in the game with the cube, and then I'm able to spend the NCO just to move out without the link team, because I don't have enough command tokens to reform at this point. So luckily NCO can be used to move Taisheng up to here to hide. And it's important to hide this model because it's worth so many points, and again, it's all about conserving the points because that's what's going to win or lose the game. Alright, with this 3-man link team, moving out now with the HMG and trying to get some shots off at this grey rifle in the distance, I actually completely forgot that he had left a couple of his volunteers outside of coherency, so he wouldn't have been particularly good at shooting back at me. Despite that, the HMG does manage to finally get some hits onto the grey rifle and render him dogged, but I can't really continue activating the HMG, who has taken a wound from this, by the way, initially, without taking any more shots, and after rendering him dogged, I decided to wait till the end of the turn. I didn't really want to move and get hit again, so quite important to keep these 3 models alive. Doctor using a spare order to come back behind this building, setting up suppression fire as well, just trying to wait it out and allow the Caledonians to sort of run out of steam. One thing I find about the Caledonian faction in general is that they have some really powerful attack pieces in the form of McMurray and Uxia and the Grey Rifle, but as they lose those components, if you're left with an army that's just comprised of just Galwegians and volunteers, you've run out of teeth, you've run out of steam, and your opponent can really capitalize that later in the game. So you've got to be careful about how you use your attack pieces with Caledonia, would be my tip. Okay, so Doctor over here, flash pulse spot nearby, Lieutenant safe, still got the hack tower standing up here with 2 wounds to go, got an HMG on this side, and we're just kind of trying to wait out this last Caledonian turn. So here it comes, Caledonians just going impetuous. We've got the Doctor moving out now, throwing down lots of smoke grenades with a light smoke grenade launcher. Basically trying to create a highway of smoke grenades. Comes over to try and revive this Cataran, but does not have a cube. Flubs the willpower check. Cataran does get removed, so that's going to be a lost opportunity to claw back some army points. But you can see this highway of smoke grenades that has been created by the Doctor in the first group. Then what happens is he decides to move out with the Highlanders, the Galwegians. My advice to him was to leave Wallace at home. It's a bit of a scale here, weighing up. If you move out with Wallace, your link team's going to pack that much more punch. You're probably going to be able to get enough army kills to swing it back with Wallace's help if you're lucky. But the problem with that play is that Wallace is going to end the turn nearby to Yuching troops. If he dies, well, you lose the objective points for losing the lieutenant, and he's worth a bunch of points on his own. So it's probably just going to be gifting the Yuching player a 10-5 victory. Whereas if the Galwegians just move out by themselves, pick up a couple of Zuyongs, you might be lucky enough to swing the points back to you if they can defend well enough, and you win the game. So I convinced him to make the smarter play. Everybody moves out, going through the highway of smoke here and setting up in this position. What happens next is he tries to go with a intuitive attack against this Zuyong here to try and finish it off. I believe if that model intuitive attacks me, I get to shoot back at him with my breaker pistols, so that's what I did. Does render him unconscious. So the Zuyong standing firm here. He's invincible. And then we have our friendly Galwegian moving out, looking to get some chain rifle hits onto this guy with the combi rifle and the missile launcher behind him. They both attempt to dodge. They both pass armor saves. We've got a missile being shot at from the hack tower into this boy here. Does end up crushing him, and he does eventually run out of orders in a situation here where all the Zuyongs are left alive. He's lost a Galwegian, and the game ends because even though the Invincible Army have an entire turn left, you just don't want to spend any orders here because you're up on points. At this stage, we've lost, what? One Flash Pulse bot, a High Dow, and I think he did end up killing one Zuyong. I can't quite remember. But the point is that Invincible Army's down something like 70 points in total, whereas the Caledonians have lost both of the big dog wolves, both of the Catarans actually, because I did come around and snipe the second one during my push. I just didn't take a photo of it. And a couple of Galwegians, and a Grey Rifle, which is definitely more than 70 points. If I move out at this stage, he might be able to ARO with like double chain rifles or something like that, and if I lose even one guy, that may tip the scales back, so the safe thing is just to not move at all. I was thinking about maybe sending the hack tower across to kill Wallace, but again, attacking and killing Wallace does mean that I have to go through some AROs on the way over there, and just wasn't really worth it, and I wouldn't have really had enough orders to do it anyway. So, game over. It's a victory to Invincible Army by a few objective points, but had a really good time this game. Managed to defend very well. I would have loved to have played this list with first turn, but luckily the list was defensive enough that I was still able to get that Alpha Strike with 14 orders if I'd needed it. And, you know, just doing tons of damage. I made a mistake there targeting his Galwegian when I should have just gone straight for the designated target with a shotgun and planted some shotgun hits into McNamara while doing that. But that was one mistake I made. But besides that, if you are up against the right opponent, and if you play it correctly, these kinds of link teams can be very, very good, both in the active turn and the reactive turn. Don't forget it. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this one. There's going to be some more Invincible Army bat reps in future, so stay looking out for them. And for now, have a good day.